Billy Idol.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Cradle of Love.
Okay, we are live for realsies. I can't. All right, here we are. Hello, everyone. My name is KatmanU, and welcome to Third Eye Salon, where in each and every show, we take a fresh look between the veils of reality. And today we're taking a fresh look between the veils of the NDE experience of Mycailín Móhr, as well as beyond that is the power of true manifesting and how to manifest from our godly estate. So this is going to be a very dynamic show today. I've already fallen in love with Mycailín. So our lovely friend Linda is not here today, but please lift her up in love and send her puppy breath, send her puppy kisses. That is what she finds to be the most healing and whole thing to do for her. So please send her love and healing energy and all your puppy visualizations. We ask that you go ahead and hit the like button if you are enjoying the content today, to share it out with your friends, and to become a subscriber here on our YouTube channel. And be sure to check out our links below. We have got Mycailín's links down there, Angela's links are down there. Our Facebook group is down there. Our podcast links. If you want to donate us a coffee and say thank you for the show, you can do that. Our Telegram link is down there as well. So let's just say hello to Mycailín real quick. Hey, Mycailín, how are you feeling?
I'm stoked. I'm totally upbeat about this. It's like everything has kind of tried to get in the way too recently of actually making this come off, not just on my end, on other people's ends as well in the team here.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, no way, you're not getting in the way of this. I may die next week. I'm doing this tomorrow.
That's awesome. And we also have Angela Anderson, artist, motorcycle mechanic, former software engineer, and channeler of oneness. Angela, it's always a delight. How are you?
I'm doing well today, guys. I am excited to be here. Mycailín, you have such a great story, such a great storyteller, and I'm so excited to get into it today. So yeah, let's do it.
Let's do this thing.
Excellent. All right. Well, I'm going to go through Mycailín's bio, and it's important that you kind of understand her background. She's been through a lot. So if you haven't got a cup of coffee or something nice and warm to drink while you're listening to this story, please do, because it's a lot. So born in 1958 and raised in Tampa, Florida, Mycailín grew up in a time when no one gave a second thought as to what we now recognize as child abuse. She overcame it through all of the constant companionship and mentoring of her inner guide, whom she calls Michael. Mycailín always loved writing and reading and science, and used them and animals to distract herself from the world so full of misunderstanding and turmoil caused by her PTSD. In 1978, she suffered a severe head trauma in a freak accident with a horse, and had an NDE that changed her perspective on everything. The world wasn't ready to talk to or hear about NDEs at that time. And so she kept it to herself. It took 18 months for her ability to learn new things to recover after the injury. She returned to college and changed her major from biology to psychology and earned a BA in psychology in 2 years. Against Michael's advice, Mycailín married for the first time in 1989, having asked Michael to let her be. He obliged and fell silent, only popping into awareness when she was in imminent danger. In 1991, she returned to college, and she nearly finished another BA in interdisciplinary natural sciences with a focus on biology when she began writing Chalice in 1995. Mycailín explains that it would be more correct to say that writing commandeered her life and changed everything again. She'd just come home from taking her last finals for the semester when Michael pressed her into awareness with a massive burst of Kundalini chill flows and told her to boot up the word processor, adding, "I have a story to tell you. I promise it will be a great adventure." For the next 6 months, she did little but scuba dive and write, and Michael was again resoundingly present. Threatened by her focus and deep enjoyment of writing, her husband acted out by being unfaithful. They divorced, and Mycailín moved to Washington State in 1999, where she lived for 9 years, during which time her little sister, mother, stepmother, and father all died. Mycailín moved back to North Florida, where she became officially disabled because of an accident at work. Trying to repurpose her life, Mycailín began again working on Chalice and its sequels. She still lives in North Florida on a small farm where she keeps a small flock of endangered species of peacocks, writes and queries literary agents, as she has always looked for the blessed outcome to redeem every challenging event in her life, Mycailín is more certain than ever that Chalice deserves an agent and traditional publication rather than going indie. She'd be pleased to reframe her entire life as a lead up to that outcome and to bringing Chalice's unique perspective to the world. After all, she says, I died in 1978 and came back to do just that. All right. So, and that's actually kind of not even giving you some of the other trauma that our friend Mycailín has experienced. So let's go ahead and start in, Mycailín, and let's know your story growing up as a kid and the abuse you were going through. And excuse me, I'm recovering myself. I apologize. And okay. How that triggered you into meeting Michael.
Okay, there was a pedophile in our family. He was extended family. It was my granduncle, and nobody but myself and my little sister knew this, what the problem was with this gentleman. And he sexually assaulted me the first time when I was 5. And after that, I was regularly with both my little sister and I were left at his place. And sometimes I was there alone and sometimes Cindy was with me. And one day I was there alone and I had an extremely foreboding feeling, an inner prompting that something bad was about to happen, really bad again. And I snuck out of the house while he was in the bathroom. And I was panicked and searching on a level that we search when we don't know what to do. We're just totally without experiential background. And I asked inwardly and aloud, what shall I do? What can I do? And there was this inner prompting that directed my eyes toward a tree. And Michael said, go up the tree. And I was like, this is ridiculous. I can't go up that tree. I'm in my Sunday clothes. It was a Sunday. I'm in my Sunday clothes. I've got my Easter shoes and my Easter dress on. And these slick-soled shoes, I'll never get up that tree. I'll get knocked out or slip or fall. And he said, just do it. I will tell you where to put your hands and feet. I will show you. And I let him lead me up that tree. I let him direct me. And this feeling of peace and love and just washed over me, just completely. My little 5-year-old mind was, despite the fact that I'm up in this tree, like a long ways up for a little kid, especially in an Easter dress and slick soled Sunday school shoes. And I was afraid he would scare the urine out of me and discover me as he walked below me, my granduncle looking for me. He had a wooden leg and he was thrashing the shrubs, the azalea hedges, looking for me. And Michael said, be quiet, don't cry out loud. And I said to him, but what if I lose control of my bladders? Then this happens. And he said, don't worry, I won't let that happen. And again, there's this just incredible soothing love washed over me, this peace. And I watched him walk away around the back of the house. And then he came back from around the house, my granduncle, that is. And he paused, he labored up the terraced yard, he was all red-faced, and he said, I know you're here. I know you're here. I hate to have to tell your daddy you've been disobeying again and hiding from me because he's got that bad temper. If you just come out, I'd share that bowl of ice cream with you. I told you we were going to have. It's such a hot day. And he went inside. He left and he went inside. And I cried just out of this beautiful joy that I was accompanied. And I knew that for the first time, that I was accompanied. And ever after that, and the thing about it was so real. And so when I say real, I mean earnest, so authentic, that it made you face yourself. It made me face myself, and to realize that if I lied or I betrayed it or I acted in an unkind way, that I was betraying myself as well, that I was doing something that would forever weigh on me. And I wished at that time for the whole world to feel what I was feeling, because I knew nobody would ever hurt each other again. If they could just feel it one time, that they would be changed by it. And so I was mad. I was really mad at Alfred, my abuser, but and I was trying not to hate him, because Michael said I shouldn't hate him, and that I should love him the way he should be loving me, in the nurturing way he should love me, that I would one day love him. And as a 5-year-old, I didn't see how it could possibly happen. I mean, how is this going to happen? I was so caught up in identification with the suffering character that I had been born into, right? And that was the focus of my experience, was through the subjective, until the horse kicked me in the head. Knocked sense into me. And in the NDE, I saw a way to, because of what Michael showed me, I saw a way to take myself out of identification with the suffering character I played in this world. I still sometimes fall into, we all do, we fall into identification with the suffering. And think, this is happening to me. This is happening to me. And what Michael had been trying to show me all along with the NDE, he whacked me to show me, no, it's happening for you. And everything that happens has a blessing, at least one, that would redeem and offset all of the trauma to get that blessing. It's like a trade-off, okay? And so that's how that all began. Now, the problem was with that. Go ahead. Yes.
I want to ask, I mean, yeah, it's a lot to put on a 5-year-old to say, oh, but you need to love your abuser and you're 5 years old. You know what I mean? That seems extremely unreasonable. But again, he's looking at things from beyond the time space, you know, right. So I guess I want to know also, at what point, because you were afraid to tell your dad, because your dad had an insane temper and you were afraid that he would just kill Alfred, which you probably would have. And rightfully so, might I say. If I was the dad, I would, it would be very hard for me not to do the exact same thing. So I'm wondering, when did the abuse stop and how did it stop? Because I know, we're going to get to the point of the NDE, but that's from 5 to 15. And I'm wondering how that shifted for you, or what shifted between the age of 5 and 15.
Okay. Because of the abuse, I had PTSD, and my response to it was to hide. Okay. Whenever I was frightened, I would hide. And so I spent a lot of time, all of my life, even now, as sequelae of that, I am kind of on patrol all the time for the best place to hide if stuff breaks out. Where shall I hide if an active shooter happens, So because I was hiding all the time, Dad would get mad at me for hiding, and he would spank me and he would yell at me. And a lot of times the things he said to me were a lot more horrifying than the spankings that he would. I mean, he would be very vivid in telling me what he was going to do to me. And of course it was hyperbole mostly, but I was a little kid and I believed him. Okay, so the next focus was, although I was exposed to Alfred, every few months I was left behind at Alfred's. And this was because, and this is such a thing, my mother was afraid my father would hurt me in a fit of pique. And so she would take me when Dad was having trouble coping with me, because I'm high energy now. You can't imagine what I was like as a 5-year-old. I was just like, zzz, everywhere, zzz. And Mom would take me to my Aunt Hilda's, who was a wonderful, wonderful lady, or she would take me to her mother's and her father's. And my abuser, Alfred, was my grandmother's brother, my maternal grandmother's brother. And granddaddy had a outboard motor shop. And so sometimes grandmother usually helped him in the shop doing the bookkeeping, the phone order, answering and stuff like that. And sometimes she had to go help granddaddy at the shop and she would leave me with Alfred. Okay, so mom trying to save me from dad put me in harm's way. Okay. And so I spent a lot of time with Michael in my mind space and heart space talking to me about dad. And I'm dad's spitting image. I mean, other than he had dark hair, I looked just like dad. And there was a day that I was hiding, watching, because I always hid and watched people to learn about them. You know, I can learn more about people when they were candidly themselves because they didn't know anybody was watching. And as I was watching dad, he was in the shop. I was actually hiding in the utility room with my dog and looking out through the partially open door. And I heard dad shout in the shop, which was like 40 feet away. And then he came out of the shop and he hurled a drill across out of the shop door into the tree that I climbed all the time to hide in. And the drill just broke against the base of the tree. And dad was standing there just looking down at the drill. And he shook his head. And I knew he was disgusted with himself. And he went over and collected the parts and went inside. And Michael said to me, you realize that when he hits you, he's hitting himself because you look like him. And that everything, your bad temper and the ways you act out, even though they're understandable from your perspective, if he knew what you've been going through, he would see you differently. Okay. And so he wouldn't hit you then, but you can't afford to tell him now because he would kill Alfred because he doesn't have a grip on his temper. And he said, but when he hits you, he's actually beating himself because everything he doesn't like in you, he sees in himself. Okay. So I was shocked by this because he spoke to me at that moment about dad's headspace. He asked me, how do you suppose your daddy got to be this way? I was about 10 or 11. No, 10. And I said, I think somebody hurt daddy too. Somebody must have hurt daddy. And so he said, so what does your daddy need to do to get over the pain from that person hurting him? And I paused because I didn't want to answer because I already could feel that it was forgive his abuser. And I wasn't ready to forgive Alfred. And I said hesitantly, forgive? And Michael said, yes, but who does he need to forgive? I said, the one who hurt him. And he said, who else? Who else does he need to forgive? And I was like, I don't know. I don't know. And he said, oh, yes, you do. You do. And I was like, who? Himself? He said, that's right. And when he said that's right, I was just whooshed with this dazzling chi flow all over my body. And this is one of the chief ways a guide will speak to you, to just draw your attention to something somebody else says that is you need to listen to, or to draw attention to something you just thought. If you get a chi flow whoosh out of nowhere, you just stop and examine what you said to yourself in your own mind space or out loud, because that is your guide saying, yes, 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 yes. Okay. So I was like, forgive himself. What did daddy ever do? He was just a little boy. Why would he need to forgive himself? And Michael said, your daddy doesn't know how to forgive at all. And neither do you yet. And I was like, what? Don't I forgive dad every time he blisters my butt? You know? And yes, I did. But there's another level of forgiveness that doesn't look like I'm the aggrieved and you're the aggriever, and I'm going to extend my largesse to you. That level of forgiveness is finding the blessing, okay, and refusing to see that person through the eyes of what they appear to be at the moment they did whatever to you that needed forgiving. Seeing them instead through the eyes of love, because love sees the heart and not the deed. Love sees the heart of the person and not the deed. And so love forgives easily what it does not even see. Okay? And so in that, our relationship changed, my relationship with Daddy, because I started perceiving him and me differently. And of just at that moment, Dad called me. I heard Dad call me, and I quickly came out of the utility room where I was hiding with the dog. And Daddy said, what are you doing in there? And I said, oh, I was just cleaning up Dog's bed, because the dog's named Dog. And he said, guess you must have gotten distracted. And I said, what? Like I was afraid he knew I was kind of fibbing, but it was to no bad end. It was just not telling the whole truth because I didn't think he would get it all. And at that moment, Michael said to me, choose wisely. Tell the truth. And Dad said, never mind all that. Don't worry about it. Like he knew I was fibbing. And he said, I want to tell you something. And let's go into the shop. We need to have a little chat. And we went into the shop, and I forget exactly right now how he began it. But what happened in that conversation was he said, little girl, you may not know it yet, but there is inside your mind a little voice. And it's a very subtle thing. But if you will listen to it, it will get louder and it will change. It might just feel like feelings at first, but it can grow into an actual voice. And by this point, I'm already dazzling with chi flows. I'm going like, oh my God, something's happening. And my skin's standing up in goose flesh all over my body. And he said, if you listen to that little voice and follow it always, it will lead you down the path you came to walk. And it will lead you to your joy. Do you understand what I'm trying to tell you? I said, yes, sir. Yes, sir, I do. I get it. And he said, are you cold? Because I was all bumped up in goose flesh. And I said, no, sir. That's just what he does when he wants me to pay attention to something somebody's saying. Dad was like, who he? I said, the little voice. And he said, oh, you know the little voice? I said, oh, yeah, I know the little voice. And he said, how long has that been going on? I said, oh, 5 or 6 years, you know. And we got into a long talk after that where hearts opened. And he asked me, okay, take a look at that drill press there in his shop. Take a look at that drill press. What do you see is different about it? And I'm going like, uh-oh. Did I do something in here yesterday? If I touch shiny metal, Dad's going to see the handprint. He hates handprints because it causes rust. So I'm craning my neck, trying to look, and I see this handprint, and I'm like, oh my God, I have to tell him the truth about me being in here when he wasn't here because I'm not supposed to do that. And he said, his hands landed lightly on my, I'm tucking my head in like a turtle trying to retreat, going, oh no, I'm going to get a lashing, you know. And his hands landed lightly on my shoulders. And he said, why do you come in here when I'm not here? And Michael said, tell him the truth. Tell him what's in your heart. And I said, I come in here because it smells like you. And I can look at how you lay your tools out, and I can learn about how you think. And I can be close to you without aggravating the hell out of you, basically. So I don't get a blistering. But I come in here because I love you and I want to be near you, but my presence seems to upset you. My being here, you know? Because you're always afraid I'll get into something and I'll get hurt because you got all these acid and stuff in here and tools. And I'm sorry I touched the drill press when I knocked the drill the drill that you just broke, I knocked it off the bench accidentally when I was leaning back against the bench, and then I bent down and grabbed the drill press, I guess, to pick it up. I'm sorry, it's probably my fault you broke the drill. And he was like, no, it's my fault I broke the drill. My fault. The drill was already broken. It was on the bench, the workbench, to be fixed when you knocked it off. And just now I got frustrated and broke it against that tree, and that has nothing to do with you either. And it was just a change in our relationship that just evolved after that. And shortly later, he used to whip my butt every day. I mean, literally, there's only a few days that he missed. And he would come to me every time and weep and beg for forgiveness and tell me I didn't deserve. He said, I don't deserve another chance, and you deserve a better daddy. And I should never hit you in anger because I'm having a bad day. If I have to hit you at all, it should be done when I'm calm because you need to learn something. And I shouldn't hit you hard. And I shouldn't say to you the things I say to you. Those are the things he would say to me in apology. Well, it wasn't very long after that there was another incident of abuse with a friend of his that he had been in the Navy with. He was our godfather, and he was a trucker. And my little sister and I were spending a couple of weeks with his family. And the mother was away during the day, and the trucker Uncle Tommy was away for a couple of weeks. And that left us behind with a 17-year-old son of theirs and their 15-year-old daughter and their 12-year-old daughter. And I was 11 when this happened. And my little sister Cindy was just 10 because she wasn't very far behind me. Anyway, somehow Tommy, when he came back, I'm not going to go into the abuse that happened there, but it was sexual, and it was mostly my little sister. But during all of these incidences of abuses, I kept leaving my body. So I was very rarely actually present for the abuse. I would just, I'm out of here. And so I was up in the tree, hiding, playing, just being myself, singing to the sky. I did that almost every day. And Uncle Tommy drove up, and he had with him the boy that abused me and my little sister, his son, Jimmy. And they went into the shop, and I heard deep voices and anger coming out of the shop. And then I saw a big arm. Uncle Tommy was 6'8" and 300 pounds. And he threw his son out into the yard, his lanky boy. And he tumbled. And I felt kind of bad for him because he was like a victim of his impulses he didn't know how to control. Whereas his little sister had actively conspired, his 16-year-old or 15-year-old little sister had conspired to trap us, my sister and I, where he could abuse us. I mean, she literally dragged my little sister down the hall and shoved her in the bedroom with her brother, okay? And another 17-year-old boy that was in there. And I was trying to beat the hell out of Sandy, that was the daughter, to save Cindy and to get into that room. And I kept tearing at the room door. She kept dragging me back. And finally, I heard her enough that she said, "You went in there so bad, you little go." And she shoved me in there and closed the door. And she said to Jimmy as she closed the door, "Hurry up." Okay. So I felt really mad at her because she had actually welcomed the malice into her heart. Whereas Jimmy was just kind of on autopilot, functioning as a not quite fully conscious person. You have no free will until you become conscious and self-reflective. You're just working on impulse. And that's how I felt about Jimmy. Anyway, so while I was up in the tree, when Tommy got ready to leave, he came back out, and Jimmy was out at the car waiting for his dad, and his dad punched him in the face. He spit at the ground and said, "Filthy," and punched his son in the face. And then he threw his son in the car and slammed the door. And my dad was waiting underneath the carport watching them leave. And when Tommy hit his son, Jimmy, I flinched to hide behind the tree. And at that moment, Dad saw me up in that tree, and he saw me for what was going on. He realized I had never been bad. I had been hiding because I was terrified, and that I was traumatized. And his heart changed. His heart changed when he saw me not as disobedient. He saw me instead as frightened. Okay. And that changed our relationship completely. He never struck me again. And he only rarely raised his voice to me. In fact, he got to be where he would just clear his throat to get my attention. He would just go, and I would stop immediately because I knew I was about to do something dangerous, and he was going to caution me. And I needed his insight because the world was dangerous. And Dad had only recently become my best friend. And so that period of time was me and Dad learning to see each other through the eyes of love instead of through the eyes of pain. And it changed totally our relationship and the trajectory of both of our lives, because Dad became progressively more and more open and candid and authentic and loving and more gentle. So that's what happened. It was
really
transformational.
Yeah, it's really intense. My whole body just starts to clench up in these, because it's just so like, it's so raw and it's so mind blowing and wow.
Yeah, not for a little kid to handle.
Oh my God.
It's so indicative of the elaborate screenplay that we develop before we come into incarnation in order to learn the lessons. It's like you were an active participant in the abuse, but yet able to sit back as an observer to pick up the lessons. Your guide walked you through those lessons, and that ability to detach at moments in order to see the broader perspective is what gave you the impetus to keep going, because through all of it, you never gave up, you never quit, but there was a progression that led you into an awareness, a broader awareness of self. And that's amazing.
Yeah, I couldn't have done it without Michael.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, and most kids don't have that. It's just, they just end up traumatized for the rest of their life. I wanted to ask you, because there's a piece I'm a little confused on. What did the little boy, your dad as a little boy, need to forgive himself for? Like, I still don't understand that. Why would a little boy who's receiving abuse need to forgive himself?
Well, this is really sad. He was about 6. He told me about this and us growing up together, because Dad and I grew up together. We grew in consciousness together and in love. And we talked every day. Just a few days after the Tommy incident, he took me into the shop and said, "I'm never hitting you again. From now on, you can ask anything you want of me. I'll be your friend. I've got your back. I'll help you solve any problems you create. I'm asking you to please trust me, even though I don't deserve your trust. I've already proved I don't deserve your trust, but I know you love me and I just love you. And I think we can get past this." So in the course, and that was another dazzling experience with G-Flows too. So in the course of this, and I knew something wonderful and sacred had been in that perceptual breakthrough forged. So over time, he told me the thing, and I think it was probably just a few months later, but what he had done was at the age of 5, because he had already been quite abused himself. He had had a very, very abusive upbringing. He spanked a chicken. He spanked a hen, and it broke an egg inside her, and it killed her. And that just stayed with him.
Wow.
That he had killed that little bird as a 5-year-old, and he felt unworthy ever after that. That unworthiness he felt in himself, he didn't want to see in his daughter, who looked just like him.
Yeah.
That was it. He killed an innocent thing accidentally, and he didn't let himself off of it, off the hook.
Yeah, because he was 5. He didn't, yeah, he wouldn't, I mean, you just don't have the capacity and there's no one there to guide you. And he's basically acting out the abuse he's receiving. He's acting out the abuse he's receiving. And there's just, oh, this planet is so hard. This is the most insane planet. It has to be the most insane planet in existence.
I can't wait to get out of here.
This kind of goes back to the structures that Amanda Hainline was talking about, the structures we build on the misperceptions of self that we develop as children. We build structures up on top of those, and they carry into adulthood, and they can carry into our next relationships, next incarnations even, right? But it's not until we can go back and see those for what they are that they dissolve. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is something Michael has said to me a lot in the last few years, is there is no free will until you are self-observant.
Right.
You can't have free will to make the better choice until you're observing how you're habitually, unconsciously making the wrong choice. And then when you observe yourself doing that and you can see the reasons why you're doing it, all of the power that you gave to that cycle of mistakes is sucked back out of it by your spiritual presence with that moment, in that moment in which you say, aha, I've been doing this reflexively, compulsively as a way of coping, and it has been unhealthy all along. And at that moment, you now have free will because you have become present and conscious enough to observe yourself sabotaging your own story.
Right. Yeah. Wow.
Instead of constructing it. Yeah.
That is powerful stuff.
Yeah.
Some people need real trauma, I guess, to wake them up. I was apparently not terribly easily moved to consciousness myself, because even after all of that, at the age of 15, I became a rigid empiricist. Okay, you'll love this. I had been climbing up the tree every day in the summertime to sing to the sky, because I believed that if I sang, first of all, singing caused chi rushes. And I just loved them. They were like kisses on my head from God, and they just shimmered down my body. And it was just, oh, the most ecstatic feeling. And so I would go up in the tree and I would sing to the sky, because we had no air conditioning and it was Florida and it was really, really hot. And the only way we'd sleep that night is if I got it to rain. And so I thought if I sang well enough to the sky, God would bless the evening with rain. Okay. And like clockwork, it rained when I, just amazingly within a few minutes, I would sing until I smelled the ozone in the air from the outwash from the thunderheads in the distance and heard them go. And then I would climb down the tree all giddy from chi rushes, fall down in the grass and wait for the rain. And I expected the rain. I expected it. Okay. Because I believed it was a real relationship. And then at the age of 15, I learned about the Bermuda High. And the Bermuda High is a meteorological event, a fact of a weather system that sits over Bermuda. And in the summertime in Florida, the wind patterns of the Bermuda High send the rain, the water, the humidity, and the rising air over the center of the state causes the air to rise, and thunderstorms are born. And then by 4 or 5 in the afternoon, it rains on Tampa. And when I saw that, I went, what? It wasn't me? All that singing? It was a Bermuda High? And that was it, man. I was like, Michael's imaginary. None of this is real. Okay. And everybody called Michael an imaginary friend to me. Oh, he's just an imaginary friend, right? And so I went full bore empiricist for the next 5 years. I was really doing great in school. I was like the top of my class and everything, studying sciences, because I wanted to know how this machine works, this venue that we're in. Isn't that funny? And then a horse
Well, so we're gonna get to the horse kicking you in the head, but I want to say you sang the rain. You did have an agreement with the rain that was real, and it was something that you brought in agreement. Like you were in alignment, the rain was in alignment. I think that's real.
Yeah, I would say it's almost like you got a dose of both sides of things. So as a child growing up, you got that feminine perspective, that creative. You were really in touch with that intuition side of things. And this one rain event pushed you over to the logical side so you could get that perspective as well. So you got like dual, like both sides of the equation. You get to see life through both sides, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, now there's an ending. There's a circle back on that story, like is true with all really good stories. I moved away from Florida. Okay. I stopped singing to the sky and we had a drought. Okay. Yeah. And then I moved away from Florida and they went into an even worse drought. Okay. Florida was in a drought the entire time I was in the Pacific Northwest. Okay. Then I moved back down here to Florida. I had been here 2 days. My Great Pyrenees dog, one of them, went underneath the house and sat on the return for the air conditioning. And I came home from the spring. I'd been down to the local springs, not very far away, for a swim. I came home and the house was sweltering. It was June 17th. Okay. And the house was sweltering. And I was like, damn, there's no air conditioning guy coming for several hours. It's really hot. So I went out on the front porch right over there. And I sang my #1 rain song. I sang my rain song, and within 5 minutes, it was raining. 5 minutes. We were in a drought here, a drought when I moved here. It almost never rained here. Now it rains here all the time. It's been raining here. It's like, I've told my sister, she still doesn't believe in Michael, okay? She doesn't believe in any of this. And I told her, because we're looking for a house to buy to live together. She wants to live next to a river. And I'm like, no, you can't live next to a river. I attract rain. I mean, we'll be flooded, okay? I attract rain. When I was in the Pacific Northwest, it rained more than usual up there. I moved to Tennessee, and the house, the first night I was there, it was a cabin, not even filled. It was just a shell. They had been in a drought for 5 years. There was 5 years of leaf litter under the deck and all over everything. And we built a fire in a faulty wood stove installed, and the wood stove set the side of the house on fire. Yes. And there was no water yet to that property. No water at all. There was a place where it came in, but no piping up to the house. And the place where it came in was like 500 feet away. So and it wasn't even turned on. So I used a shovel to because we're pounding out the flames on the side of the house. And lest it restart, I used a big shovel to carry it outside the fire, scoop it out and put it in the driveway on the rocks. And some of the embers fell down underneath the deck, between the slats in the deck. And it's smoldering and then I can't stamp it out because it's under the deck. I'm standing on the front porch of this place going, Father, I need rain. And the wind comes up. And the embers underneath the porch are flaming from the rain. And I'm like, no, I didn't say wind. I said rain. And there was a splat. Big fat raindrop. I need more than that. And then it was like splat, 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 splat. And then a downpour, and it put out the fire. And I got every container for the animals I had brought with me, every container in the house, and put it under the drip line of the house to fill it with water for the animals and for us and for whatever we needed. And I was just downpouring, and it rained for 2 weeks. And I told this story to my new neighbors, and this is the Cumberland Plateau of Tennessee, and they believe in stuff like this. Okay, Baptists. And after 2 weeks of rain, the neighbors all showed up at my house and said, the hollers are full. You know what a holler is? Holler?
No.
It's the hollowing between two hills with the creeks run through. The holler, they call it.
Okay.
Hollers are full of water. Suppose you could get it to stop raining? Yeah. I got it to stop raining. I asked them, please, would you stop? And they think I'm a witch. They're going to burn me at the stake for Christ. Not good to annoy your neighbors. So it stopped raining. And about 4 or 5 days later, the same neighbors came and said, we have kin in Texas, and Texas is in a real bad drought. Do you suppose you could get it to rain in Texas? I said, I'll see what I can do. But I was ambivalent about Texas. I didn't really like it. I kind of wish Texas would secede already at that point. At that point, I was not happy with Texas, right? And so it took me a while. It took me about 6 or 7 days to get rain for Texas. And I was literally praying for the rain. Come on, seriously, Father, they need rain. Help them out. I know. I'll lift my grudges. All right, let go of that. And it finally did rain. But I was looking at rain clouds and going, that one right there on the radar, that one right there. That one's a good seed cloud. Let's do that one. Come on, get in position. Drop the rain there, Lord.
That is wild. This is
It worked.
That's amazing. All right, let's move into your NDE. Because we are already 45 minutes in and we haven't even talked about your NDE yet. So let's hear about that.
All right. Okay, so I was 20. I went horseback riding with a friend of mine, and I had forgotten to bring the feed. There were 2 horses. One was a mare. Her name was Ticker, and she was extremely gentle and easy to catch. She liked to be ridden. She was a barrel mare. She's very, very maneuverable and trained to be extremely responsive to the rider. So we caught her, and I thought, well, how am I going to catch that big stallion who I nicknamed Mud because I can't remember his name. Anyway, how are we going to catch Mud? And I'm thinking, I'm sitting there on the back of the horse, token a number, 20, experimenting with drugs and rock and roll and alcohol. And I'm thinking, okay, I think I can maneuver him on Ticker to go into the paddock there, the small paddock. I can catch him. So I gallop, trot over to where Tammy is, my friend who went riding with me. I said, okay, this is what my plan is. I'm going to ride Ticker and chase him in there. So I gave her the doobie I was smoking. Oh, here, you finish it. And Ticker was so responsive that the minute I thought turn, your body telegraphs to the horse what you want. I don't know how it happens, but the horse knows. She spun on her heels and lunged forward. I had to grab the saddle horn to stay on her back. And here we are in a gallop. And I'm down really close to her neck with my face, standing in the saddle with my knees bent. So my knees are taking all of the bumping, absorbing the shock. And I'm like jockey style, and the saddle's bumping me in the rear end each time she strides. Pap, pap, pap. And the stallion's right in front of me, and we're chasing him really close. And time slips into slow motion, and I see his rump rising really slowly. And Michael says he's kicking. And I answer, he can't get me up here. So what? He can't get me up here. Wrong. Okay, this is where he kicked me. All right. He knocked the skin right off my face. I wasn't there for the impact. Just as I said, he can't get me up here. Suddenly I have the sensation I'm rolling left. I'm rolling left. I've left my body. I go about 100 feet away. I turn around and I look back to see what's going on. And I watch as the head of the body snaps back. The hands let go as it goes limp. And then it falls backwards onto the rump of the horse that's running out from underneath the body. And the body flops on the rump of the horse 2-3 times as it falls off. And I'm thinking, oh, I hope her feet don't get stuck in those stirrups, And it wasn't even me, her, it was her. Hope her feet don't get stuck in the stirrups. She get dragged. They didn't get stuck. She goes off the back of the horse. She lands on her head. Now this is in still frames. It's so slow motion. It's like click, click, click. She lands on her head. I see the head hit. I see the shoulders and the upper body, and then the legs hit with a truly dispiriting thud. Boom. Okay. And I am in a lustrous void. Oh, it's like a black pearl with a beautiful sheen, like gasoline on water. Okay. And I feel perfect. I feel incredibly good. And I say to myself, I'm perfect. Nothing will ever hurt me again. And at that instant, I become aware of Michael's presence when he says to me, nothing could have ever hurt you to begin with. You're an eternal being. Now, this is interesting because I tasted who he was. When I say tasted, I mean, it's like his identity was somehow, like taste and smell are wedded to physical objects, wedded to this taste of his presence. And I recognized him. And there was a second of, my God, it's you. Because I had gone full-blown empiricist and I thought he was imaginary. I'm going like, oh my God, it's you. Of course, was the next thought. Of course, I've been wrong. It's you. And we went right on. He's like, yes, it's me. And I've been here all night. But it's boom, right on past that, right? Because it was like picking up with your best friend that you haven't seen, but you picked right up with the conversation you last left off with. And I said, okay, well, that being so, nothing could have ever hurt me. And I can tell you're telling me the truth. I can taste the verity. Why was it so scary? And he said, well, because you thought you could suffer loss and die. But that was necessary because without that, you would have never learned what you went there to learn from the experiences that seemed so scary. You wouldn't have taken them seriously. And I said, what did I go there to learn? Why? I can't quite remember. And he said, you went to summon your will. I said, what? I went through all of that just to learn what I wanted. And he said, no, you misunderstand what I mean by your will. I'm going to have to show you. Suddenly, boom, I'm in a vignette from my life. I'm 18 months old. Mom has bought my first pair of shoes and put them on my feet. And I'm thinking I'm tied to the floor and I'm laying there on the floor screaming bloody murder. And I'm watching me while I'm being me. And I'm my mother. I can feel her feelings. Okay. So I'm like 3 different perspectives. And I can feel her ambivalence. And I realize from her ambivalence, because we were a very poor family, that she was a little bit annoyed because she'd spent this money on new shoes that she didn't really have to spend, but they were to protect my feet. And here was me pitching a fit with no appreciation. But I was only 18 months old, so she was forgiving me. So she had this melange of feelings. And when I realized, oh, the shoes were to protect my feet. I mean, this is the number one thing my mother said to me growing up over and over again was, where are your shoes? Because I was always running around barefoot. She'd go, I just bought you shoes. Where are your shoes? So I was always taking them off. She was afraid I'd lose them. So from that, I was like, wow. So the blessing in that trauma was shoes to protect my feet. And I made it the hideous experience it was by thinking I was tied to the floor. Okay, I can see that. Then suddenly, whoom, I'm back in the void with Michael. And I briefly review this with him. Is that what I'm supposed to get from this? And then, yes. And then, whoom, I'm back in another vignette. I am fighting with my abuser, Alfred, who raped me at 5. I'm in that, reliving that, and I'm fighting with him. And in the course of that, I realized I found Michael because I could feel him even there with me. I was me. I felt Michael there with me at the same time. And I realized that I had found Michael in my consciousness because of this abuse. And that presence had shown me one beautiful way after another to look at everything bad that was happening in my life. And that I had a tendency to go back to being identified with the suffering character instead of seeing the blessing. Okay. And that if you see it through the perspective of the blessing that comes out of it, all of the pain goes out of the event and it's neutralized and forgiven. So, wow, I got that. And then whip back into the lustrous void with Michael. And I'm like, did I get that right? Is that, yes, you got that right. So then I'm down into another vignette. My dad is wearing out a switch on me. Okay. And I left my body in the course of this. I was myself, but I was dad. And Michael was present and I felt all of that, but I left my body in the course of that. And I realized that all of the abuse that I had suffered over and over again, leaving my body, which was my way of escaping, had taught me I was not my body. And I knew this from a very young age. I am not my body. Okay. So, which is hard to get. My body belongs to me. And I would tell other children, your body belongs to you. You can make it do things, right? And they were like, no, I can only run so fast. No, make it run faster. You can do it, but you can't do it until you know you can do it. And then you own that. Okay. So boom, I'm back in the lustrous void with Michael. And I'm like, did I get it right? He goes, yes, you got that right too. You are not your body. That was the blessing you got from it. Okay. But while you were living all that abuse, you were identified with it. That was what you saw. That was what you felt. But now from this perspective, you can see it through the blessing and it is redeemed by seeing it that way. All the suffering goes out of it. It's a gift. Now it's something you went through to get a gift and it's totally legitimized. You go, yes. Would I go through that again to know Michael in another life? Absolutely. Because he's been the most blessed, cherished thing in my life outside of my blood family, blessed and cherished. And so I'd go through all of that. So there was one more vignette and it was of being on the back porch of the house that I lived in when I was born. And we lived there till I was about 5 or 6. And I hear the screen door. It's a summer afternoon or early summer, late spring. And I hear the screen door open, the spring going the way it did when the metal was singing from being stretched. And I smell apple pie. And my mom's handing me a piece of pie on a napkin out the back. And it's warm. And I'm eating this pie. Oh my God, it's so good. And I'm looking at the fence and it's got this beautiful honeysuckle growing on it. And there's all these beautiful bees and butterflies just, perusing this honeysuckle. And the sky is gorgeous and it's a beautiful day and everything is love and good and nothing bad. And I'm just loved the world, just loved it, and wanted it to be that way for everybody. All the time. And I'm thinking, if I could give them all Michael, if I could give them all this guidance that allows the blessed perspective, this is how everybody would feel all the time, like this moment. And I realized that was my will. My will was to summon, my will was to give that to everyone so that everyone could step outside of the suffering and regard it from the point of the blessing that could be gotten out of it all the time so that people would stop suffering. And I'm back with Michael in the lustrous void, and I'm realizing that the whole world is a dream, and it really is a dream. And we make it as it seems to be by the labels we apply, the things that we tell ourselves things mean. And that this is how we construct the world. And this is how we curate our life story and make it what we want it to mean. And that if I could give that to everybody, it would help solve the suffering problem. It would release so much suffering. And we laughed. We laughed and laughed at how funny it was that we give away our agency and our power to the world by saying it's doing something to us. We give that away when we are the ones who actually make the world as it is. And if we could just reclaim our power and our awareness of it, we could make the world new all over again. In an instant was the feeling I had, in an instant. So we laughed and laughed at this. And then when I saw how we trick ourselves, I saw the tragedy of it. And we cried and we cried and we cried together. And suddenly I stopped and I said to him, I have to go back. I have to tell everyone. I have to do it. How do I get back in? It's just a dream. The world's just a dream. How do you get back in a dream? And he told me, well, you can go back anywhere in your timeline because you've already done that 5 different places during the life review. And you can pick up and experience an entirely different timeline from that point forward. You can even go back to the point just before the horse kicked you and avoid being kicked and have a different timeline. But if you want to remember everything you just saw and learned to give it to others, you have to go back through the last moment. You have to go back into the wrecked body because otherwise it will be part of a different timeline, the stuff you just learned. It will be this timeline and you'll be in a different one where you didn't suffer the damage. I said, I don't care. How do I make it happen? How do I get? He said, remember the last moment that you can recall and summon your will. Just will to be there. And I did it. I just remembered the horse's rump rising and I desired strongly to return. And there was like a rushing of wind. It sounded and felt like a rushing of wind. Just whoa. And I was back in the body, trying to get up. Now, the girl that was with me, Tammy, told me as she was running toward me when she saw me hit the ground, she said, at a distance, I thought I heard you laughing. I thought you weren't badly hurt, but you were thrashing on the ground. I was having a grand mal seizure. Michael had told me before I came back, he said, you have to make it stand up if you don't. Because I had said, I must be dying. And he said, well, yeah, you know, more or less. Your head is damaged from the horse kicking. And if you can't make it stand up, the swelling will cause you to cease. It will cease. So you have to make it stand up. So here she is, Tammy, running towards me. While this is going on, I'm in this dilated experience. I fell through time, left the body, fell inward through myself. That's how we die. The body falls away, we fall into consciousness, time dilates. A whole lot happens in a very short period of time. I had this entire experience while my body was thrashing in a grand mal seizure. And she is hearing me laugh. And she said, then I got closer to you and it sounded to me like you were weeping. And then I stood over you and I realized you were weeping and crying at the same time. You were thrashing. But I'm sure this had to have been exactly the moment when I'd had the insight about the sadness, the tragedy of it all, and the ridiculousness of the error. And she said, then you went utterly still, and I feared you were dead. She said, but you weren't still very long, and you opened your eyes and you started trying to get up. But you couldn't get up. You were really uncoordinated. And I kept trying to hold you down. I kept saying, stay down, you really hurt. Don't get up, you really hurt. But you wouldn't listen to me and you just wouldn't look at me. You just kept trying to get up. And she said, then after I wouldn't relent of trying to help you get up, you stared into my eyes and you said, Tammy, I have to get up. Help me to stand. And she said, it took 3 times. 3 times before I could get your efforts coordinated with mine. You were really discombobulated. And she got me to my feet and I was waxy catatonic for about 5 or 6 minutes before I really came back and woke up. I had a bandana she had taken off my head. I had it wrapped around my head and she had taken it off my head and filled it with ice from the cooler we bought. It was in the back of the car. And she had come to me and said, put this against your face. And I just stared at her because I was catatonic. Nothing she was saying had any meaning. And she put it in my hand and put my hand against my face. And then I wake up, she's taking me by the left hand to the car, and I'm all discombobulated, and it feels like everything's upside down, but I know it's not, because I can feel my feet pressing against the earth. So I know I'm right side up, but everything was totally wrecked as far as my nervous system went. And I said to her, what happened? And she said, I've told you again and again. I had been unconscious while she asking, what happened? What happened? Okay. And she said, and I said to her, okay, well, tell me again. Okay. And she did. She told me again, you got kicked in the face by the stallion. He knocked you off a ticker. And then there was this guy who had been stirring a fire pit. He strided in slow motion next to us, but big, long strides. And he opened the door of the Pinto. I had thought it was the Anglia, but it was the Pinto. And I turned around and I sat down with my legs out, and I put my hands down like this over my face. And I said, I'm going to be so sick. I'm going to be so sick. I'm so sick. Oh my God, I'm so sick. Because the vertigo was massive. I was really, really wrecked. So that's my near-death experience.
Wow.
And I was only intermittently conscious for like the next 8 hours.
When did you start to remember what happened with Michael from being in this state of just not knowing which way is up? When did you start to remember Michael, your exchange with Michael?
When did I start to remember the actual NDE in the void, in the lustrous void? I never forgot it. I knew it immediately. It was what I came back to deliver. It was like part of me. It was embedded in me, so to speak. It took me months to begin to remember stuff that I had been studying. In fact, I lost an entire semester of education in college that I had taken. I have no ability to retrieve voluntarily what I learned during that semester, but it will rush things, aspects of it into awareness when they're triggered by something that reminds me of it. And then I go, oh yeah, you know, but I came back for that. So no trouble.
You didn't lose it. Okay, that's good.
No.
So the power of your will, you came to remember the power of your will. And by that, I just kind of want to make sure that is crystal clear, because I feel like that is the crux of the rest of it, where you're saying the power of my will is to perceive what is and know what is beyond the condition of the experience or the experience itself. I'm trying to find a way of saying it. Feel free to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Summoning your will is a process of being the decider of what things will mean to you. Okay. This is the act of summoning your will. It is first to become conscious that you have this power, that you have been allowing situations to impinge upon you and be defined by society and what the average person would react to and say, oh, this is horrible, this is terrible abuse. But wait a minute, out of that abuse came this and this and this and this good thing that allowed me these really expansive insights into the nature of my own spiritual progression and who I am and what we all are. Okay. And so when you summon your will, you must first be aware that you can do it. Okay. That you are the author of what things will mean to you. And if you take that authorship in power, in your power, you claim it, it can allow you to totally curate your experience. You become the one who assigns what things mean. Now, in doing this, can you hear him?
Yeah,
Can you hear him?
Yeah, I love cats.
I do too. I've got 9 of them though, and they pick the worst times. Yeah. Okay. Give me another question, because I've kind of lost my thread
Yeah, this, you were talking about being a deliberate creator, and that's what you just totally described, is what it means to deliberately create with intention your experience, because you are the projector of what you experience. And you came to the way you came to realize that was experiencing all the perspectives, like you experienced growing up being intuitive, and then getting to a stage where you totally denied that intuition and function from the logical side. But it took that NDE to bring you back around, and those experiences being totally intuitive and being logical, it gave you the impetus or the broader perspective to be able to see that NDE experience basically validated everything that you had come to know, and it gave you a broader perspective on which to base what you now know about the self. Yeah, and being able to share that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, even a little more than that, in the instant where we were weeping and laughing at the same time at the way we trick ourselves into giving away our agency and giving away our power to a world we created.
Right.
And blaming the world we created with our own attributions we created. And then we blame the world for the suffering we live in it.
Right.
Okay. And this was important, because not only could it stop individual suffering, but if it catches fire and everybody learns how to see, groks how to see through the eyes of love, not the deed, but the heart. What is behind this person's actions? Why are they acting this way? Just the way I went from being a disobedient child he needed to spank into submission, into being a frightened, traumatized child he needed to nurture. And it changed his heart when he changed his mind about me. Okay. And that could take over the world if people would just learn to do that. Okay. It could take over the world and change the entire paradigm. So that's why I came back. That was my will, to summon that into this world so everybody could enjoy it. And mind you, this was 1978. And when I started trying to tell people, they weren't ready for NDEs. They weren't ready for it. So I sat on this for 43 years, wondering why the hell I had come back.
Mm-hmm.
And then a friend of mine started showing me these NDEs online. And she nudged me to contact Jeff, Mr. Móhr.
Yeah.
And here we are.
We've got a question from Mel Hoffman. She says the way she really valued your talk with Jeff Móhr, by the way. She said it was transformative. The way I heard it was that you used your will to react to what happens rather than create what happens. Is that accurate? I'll say that again. The way I heard it was that you use your will to react to what happens rather than to create what happens. Is that accurate?
Basically, yeah, I'm redefining the significance. I'm deciding what it will mean to me, yes. But there's a broader application. And that broader application, as I saw in the few moments when we were laughing and weeping simultaneously together, that broader application is because the world is a dream and we perceive each other through the lenses of our mistakes. We mistake why people are motivated to doing what they're doing. And then that kind of snowballs to keep us from ever perceiving the actual person and why they're doing what they're doing. And this causes a whole bunch of discord and conflict where it need not be, because we are all the same. We are all wanting to be loved. We're all wanting to be acknowledged. We're all wanting to make a meaningful contribution. And if we could see each other through the eyes of the heart instead of through the eyes of pain and fear,
Mm-hmm.
it could change literally the whole world. Imagine if Mr. Putin, for instance, saw how he was alienating the whole planet with his threats, and how it didn't have to be that way. How we could all get along. How, imagine if he didn't perceive himself as under attack, simply because there's a sovereign nation next to him that used to belong to his nation. It doesn't anymore. They don't want to belong to that nation anymore. And that's okay. That's no insult to him or his country. They want their independence. Imagine if he could re-perceive that situation, how it could change the geopolitical dynamic. And I mean, that's every nation has that opportunity to re-perceive its neighbors and its perceived adversaries.
Well, I think also I'd like to say that, it's contagious, I hope, or that because it has to start with us. We can't worry about trying to convince anybody else. We have to be the one who embodies it. And then it's contagious from frequency to frequency.
Yes.
Mel asks again, she's got a question here. The creation happens when we create our life plan prior to birth, is the question. The creation happens when we create our life plan prior to birth.
Is that a statement or a question?
It's a question.
Okay, you plan the basics of what you're coming into. You plan, I planned, yes, my dad will have these tendencies, this terrible temper. He'd have accidentally killed a chicken and be holding his feet to the fire over that and doesn't know how to forgive himself. Okay, and he's gonna have this anger and I'm gonna look just like him and he's gonna take all of his anger out on me because he loves me and he doesn't want me to go down a wrong path like him. And I also had a horrible temper. I had a horrible temper because I was being abused terribly and I was frightened, but all of that, we choose the basic dynamic of the family and what's going on, who we're going to be born to, and the lessons we can teach each other. So Dad and I rescued each other, and we're like really close. Even though he's passed on, we're really close, okay? Because we grew up together, we forgave each other into a unique joint salvation. Okay, a unique joint salvation. Now, salvation is an interesting word. That's the main problem is people ascribe a whole lot of moralistic overlay, a patina on everything, when really it's about technique. And my NDE was not about anything religious at all, even though God was not unmentioned. He was definitely mentioned, but mine was very technical. This is, people misunderstand the meanings of words. Salvation is a state of perceiving yourself in the situation in such a way that you no longer suffer from it. Instead, you are taking back the power that you gave things to hurt you, to make you identified with the suffering mortal being that perceives itself under constant threat. Okay, when you take that power back and you learn to do it consciously, you have summoned your will and you are in a state of salvation. You no longer suffer the way you did before because you are no longer identified with the suffering person. The dead have no need of salvation. The dead are no longer suffering. Okay? Salvation is something you live in this world or you never get it at all. Because once you leave it, there's no need for salvation. So yeah, you plan the basic paradigm of what you're going to be born into, but then all potential outcomes that exist in superposition simultaneously, like Schrodinger's cat is alive and dead at the same time in that box till you, the observer, open the box and see the cat and you make it either dead or alive by your observation. Okay, so no, you don't plan all of it. You plan the basic challenges that are opportunities. Okay, and you can turn those into great blessings once you discover your godly estate, your ability to wield your will by determining what you will allow things to mean to you. You decide. I hope that answered your question, Mel.
Thank you. Yeah. And we have our friend Mycaline's contact information down there too, Mel, if you want to reach out with for more conversation, if that's need more clarity. Let's talk about Schrodinger's bunny. How will you tell the bunny story? Because here's I just had such a great pre-show talk with Mycailín the first time. It was like, yes, this is exactly who I want to have on the show. I already love her because there's just such a clarity and wisdom around this idea of understanding your owning your willpower through your perceptions and what you choose to perceive and not perceive, when the value you choose to assign. And then it also we talked about like being able to fool yourself into expecting what you want, because how do I back up? I'm trying to like cram it all in. Talk about the venue being conscious, Mycailín, and then how that impacts Schrodinger's bunny.
Okay, so this venue is a dream that we are jointly, collectively making. All right. And we're doing it constantly. And we're doing that in a very physical and a very spiritual level at the same time, because the physical manifestations come out of the spiritual. All right. And if you're perceiving in a spirit of fear and hate is caused by fear, you will create one set of outcomes, versus if you're perceiving out of love, you reconcile things with your abusive father and become like soulmate twins. Okay. So if you a lot of people say, well, the power of intention. Well, yes, intention is important. Hard work important too. Yes, hard work is important, because every time you do something that behaves as if you expect a certain outcome, you're actually telling the venue that you are looking for this outcome. If you want a baby, you buy you do the biological work, and you buy the cradle, and you decorate the room, because all of that tells the venue you expect a baby. Do not look for what you do not want to find. If your bunny is missing, don't go looking by the side of the road for its body. You're telling the venue you expect to find the bunny on the side of the road dead. Don't look there. Don't look there. Look where you want to find the bunny, okay? If you see a hawk nest up in the tree where the bunny was recently reported, you don't look at the hawk nest and go, oh, my bunny. You go, yeah, bunnies are fast. My bunny will survive. So I had this friend. You are in the lustrous void now. We're all in the lustrous void. There's only one place to go, and that's home. And you're actually there now. It's just that your perceptions are anchored in this dream through this biological mechanism, which is also an emanation of spirit. So I have this friend that I met from the Jeff Mara show, and she contacted me to say, can you help me find my bunny? Because I happened to mention that since I came back from the lustrous void, I have a knack for finding things, and I do. And it's not really that I'm finding them, it's that I'm manifesting them. And I'm manifesting them because the venue is conscious. I know it's conscious. It can feel me when I'm summoning rain, okay? And it sends the rain, all right? And we're integrated into that venue as part of the same spiritual stuff that makes up the physical cosmos that appears to be so solid, but it's not. It's not solid at all, okay? It's mostly space in between the particles that make it up. It's mostly space. It's like 99% space, okay? So all that space and the dark matter and all that stuff they haven't been able to figure out and define yet, that's spirit. And that's the interface between what appears physical and solid and what is really driving it all, which is expectation. So you set the intention and then you show the venue you have the expectation by doing the physical work and the mental work of staying in manifesting that expectation of what you want, the thing that you want. So my friend contacts me, says, can you help me find the bunny? And I said, sometimes I can help. So we go through, her bunny is missing a week at this time. The last week, we've gone through a lot of chatting by phone and everything back and forth. And every time she would tell me the things that she had seen and observed, a yard full of dogs where the bunny was seen, and now she's worried the dogs got the bunny. the hawk's nest and the road that's so busy that the bunny had to cross and all of this stuff, reasons why the bunny should be dead. And I keep telling her, no, the bunny is not dead, because it doesn't matter whether the bunny's dead or not. You're stepping into a positioned probability. Yeah, maybe in some reality, bunny was dead. Okay, but I wanted to get us both into the time stream, step us into it where the bunny was alive and would come back to her. And so summoning the will, I kept saying, I know you are bringing the bunny back to my friend. I would see her with the bunny in her arms, really happy, really elated. And I kept picturing it. And every time she would lose hope and faith, I would say, no, I really don't believe he's dead. I believe he's coming back to you. I can feel him coming back to you. Part of what helped in this process was because I could tell her things about, I saw, asking Michael for images and guidance, I saw places the bunny went normally and described them to her. And she was like, yes, that does exist. And that's where he goes. Yes, he does go there. And so because I had the ability to see these things, she placed some credibility in me. She said, okay, I'm willing to believe this person might still be able to help me. She might have an inside line on how this works. And so that helps, because her belief compounds my willing and my expectation. And every time I continue to contribute to, when she loses hope, I say, no, I don't believe the bunny is dead. I believe you will be back with your bunny. Okay, so we're on the phone. Schrodinger's bunny is still missing, but we're talking on the phone about this bunny whose name is Smorsky, and he is precious. I could see why she was devastated. Okay, we're on the phone talking about Schrodinger's bunny. When we're talking exactly about what we've discussed here, the summoning of the will and how to pray by visualizing the outcome you want and speaking it into where you want to be, the timeline you want, the superpositioned timeline of probable realities you want to step into together. Okay, we're talking about that. When she gets a message come through on Messenger that says, is somebody missing a bunny that's tan colored with chocolate spots? And she says, what? And she reads it out loud, and she's not listening to me anymore. What? And she reads it out loud, and I'm like, get off the phone. That's your bunny. The bunny was like a block away, right? She's been looking all over. She's been doing all sorts of great expectation work to summon this bunny back, putting the cage out with his favorite food, taking his bunny pellets and sprinkling them in a lot. By pellets, I mean his scat, his feces, so that he would follow the scent to the cage. Oh, in my territory, look, there's my poop. Right? She's been doing great expecting work. And that's what you do. You decorate the room, you buy the crib, and you do the biological work. If you want and expect a baby, you get the baby. That's how it works. Well, this is how you get Schrodinger's bunny back. She actually got her bunny back that very instant. And that night, it was like, I guess it was about 30 minutes later, and she called and told me how she had chased the bunny all over the yard, and the bunny was too fast for her. And she prayed with all of her undivided heart and mind. Please, 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 God, please help me catch the bunny. And the bunny ran underneath some bushes to hide from her, and he cornered himself, and that's how she caught him. And I was like, well, what do you think caused the bunny to run into the bushes? Your prayer, your undivided summoning of the outcome you wanted. Never relent. Never relent. Don't give up. Doesn't matter what the physical environment tells you. Doesn't matter what the hawk's nest and the car traffic and the dogs. Does not matter. You persist. You persist. And even if the bunny is actually dead in the timeline you're in, you're going to step into another timeline where the bunny's still alive. That's how it works.
And I wanted to pull out a piece that you had told me in a pre-show chat, which was when you were talking to her about the bunny, and you said, what would you like to have happen? And she said, I would like the bunny to hop through the cat door and come into the house. And you said, has the bunny ever done that? No. Well, that's not a great expectation then. So you have no expectation within you to work with in order for that to, so you've got to adjust your you have to employ your expectation in your favor.
That's right.
You know, and so, you know, like, do you think you can win the lottery? I'd get hit by lightning before I win the lottery. Well, then that's your expectation, is that you
Probably going to be hit by lightning.
Right. And so it's one of those things of being able to, I just love the conversation of being able to sort of manipulate your expectation or wield your expectation consciously so that it's in your favor and it's no longer, you're no longer wishing for something that you can't believe you'd receive, because that's where most of us cross create and we just get stuck and don't do anything.
That's exactly right. Yeah. Yeah. You do the physical work that convinces you that there's a higher probability that the expectation will pay off. Do the physical
for focusing yourself toward a specific timeline, but you're doing the work to bring yourself to that specific timeline. That's exactly what it is.
You're convincing yourself it's possible by doing the work to converge the probabilities on the outcome you want. I mean, like, I'm writing a book and writing a book and writing a book and editing, associating with writers, associating with editors, associating with agents, querying, all of it to lead to the outcome that I want, because I've put in the work. And we all believe naturally in this environment that to get what you want, you must do hard work. Okay, because we believe that, doing the work makes the expected outcome more likely to manifest.
Mm-hmm. All right. That's awesome. That's really, I want to make sure people, we went through that, because I feel like I'm still, I understand it. I don't know that I'm embodying it, but I'm understanding it more and more. So before we wrap up and head out, I wanted to have you talk to us about Chalice, and what is Chalice about, and what is your heart's intention with Chalice?
Chalice is aimed, it's okay. People are really resistant to being taught anything, except for the people that show up for shows like this. Those people have already opened themselves to alternate ways things could be working. So Chalice is a very sexy, very marketable, very not mainstream, because although kind of in a way, it's literary, but my vampires are literary. I mean, the vampires in my books, it's a literary, I'm the literary vamp. All right, so all my characters are vampires. Originally, I started out with Chalice with vampires because I wanted to take on some extreme biological concepts and ecological concepts. Because a vampire could live much longer than a human being, they would be able to see the cumulative effects of the daily insults to the environment over time. And they'd be able to present a very long-term perspective as compared to human beings, which are destroying the world because of our environmental myopia. Because of our short lives, we live seeking gratification crammed into our little lives because we're not going to live that long. So we do a lot of avoiding pain and searching for pleasure. And we try to cram a lot in of that. And so I started out wanting to use vampires because they could give us the long view. Also, they're very popular. Okay. Yep. And so they would enjoy natural readership that way. So I built into Chalice all of the concepts that we've been discussing here. There's a couple of NDEs in Chalice with the natural revelations that come out of them, and how they change the characters as they go through these things and gain these new perceptions. There's also a lot of telepathy. These are not, this is the mixture of the empiricist and the spiritual. Just like in me, it's in Chalice. It's very biologically based. This is a parallel evolved species of hominid. They are in their own niche, meaning they're integrated well. I've constructed a beautiful model and theory of them so that they fit and they're plausible. And yet they have telepathy. They have an empathic ability, not all of them. This is a trait that not all of them have, to be able to feel each other's emotions. There's a love story, of course, in it. But all of the concepts that we've been discussing are built into the plot of how things work to the vampire realm, okay? It's built into the plot to allow people to open their minds to, surrendering their doubt about things, how they work, and what's suspending disbelief, and doing it in a way based in physics and science, the sciences of physics and biology, that can mix their expectations of the solidity of the way the world seems to work, okay, with the spiritual aspect of how it actually works, okay? So our characters go through a variety of revelations and changes in the way they view things, just the way I have through these experiences. And it's not strictly about vampires. It's just that all the major characters are vampires so that they can have the longevity. It takes longevity to learn these concepts. I mean, that's why we come back time and time and time again, is to learn these concepts. Instead of in one long lifetime, we do it in many lifetimes. So these vampires give us an opportunity to, if we could all come back with our memories intact, most of us would be much more willing to return here. It's having to grow up over again, go through all that hell that causes us to not want to be here, right?
Yeah, it's like you have to be re-traumatized every time you come in, as opposed to just being able to continue, and just freaking continue it and be like, okay, I got that one done. Like, oh, life interrupted, I didn't get it done, so I have to come back so I can get it down. And I mean, on the other side of it, yeah, it's like I understand there's that whole thing of it's like the actor who gets to play a bunch of different characters, and so the actor's fine for playing all the different characters. I enjoy playing the characters, but the characters themselves are like, oh my God, you could have written me a lot better. That was horrible choices on your part. And it's just the difference between the personality and the greater self.
And the vampires, because they don't die and have to start over again, they're much harder to kill. You can kill them, but they're biological beings. They don't have to go through that. They don't have to forget every time and come back and do it again and relearn and then die again and all of that reincarnation thing. They can have a lifetime of 2,000 years and accumulate vast intelligence and understanding of the way things really work, because in one life they can do it. They don't have to keep coming back. And that seemed to be a really good way to go about incorporating these spiritual concepts. So I use vampires.
Yeah.
They're very sexy vampires.
Excellent. Well, I'm absolutely rooting for that to, well, we know that it will, because you're expecting it to, so we know that it will.
One way or another.
Yep, absolutely will.
One way or another. The objective was to get the message into a book in a way people would want to read, that we're not out there strictly I could write my biography and that would do it. I could write a book just about my ND and these principles, and that would do it. But those would only reach selective audiences, and those are like preaching to the choir. Those people are already looking, okay? Whereas Chalice, people will be reading it for the intellectual value, the sex. There's plenty of that. It's hot, and some people will read it just for the vampires because they like vampires. And so, it's a mix of sci-fi, horror. I like to think of it as inspirational horror, just like life. Just like life. Life is
life is inspirational horror. Oh my God! For any truer words ever spoken. And it's just like every NDEer that we've spoken to has had like a horrific childhood. It's just like there's always that thing of digging out the well of suffering, so that way when the suffering's over, it's an empty vessel for all the joy. But the suffering seems to be the thing to whittle down the depths so it can hold more joy. That's what I get from all of that. But all right, let us wrap it up with that. Any final closing words, lovely Mycailín?
I think we pretty much covered it, honestly, but be the observer of yourself. Watch your thoughts. Oh, also, if you want a deep relationship with your guide so that you can learn to hear them better, and this is the most important thing you could ever learn, is to hear your guide. Because once you have your guide will teach you everything I'm not going to be around to teach. Okay. Go ahead.
Let's talk about that then. This is something I wanted to really talk about was how do we hear our guide? So let's talk about that and then we will close.
I think we mentioned earlier that one of the things that the guide will do when they're initiating contact with you is they'll give you chi shivers. They'll stand your skin up in goose flesh and send shivers down your spine, or it may feel like fire dazzling, a chilling fire dazzling through your body. It's not the same thing as when you've got chills. It's very pleasurable. It's not because you're sick sort of feeling. Mm-hmm. So whenever you get that feeling, stop. If somebody has just said something that evoked that response, really consider what they said, because that is your guide telling you there's fruit in what that person just said. Listen to that. That's the way they initiate contact. If there's nobody around, it's just you and you get that, stop and observe your thoughts. What were you thinking at the moment that happened? Because there's fruit to be found in that. Follow the trail of what you were thinking, and then be introspective about it. Actually consider it, mull it over, give it your spiritual juice. If you want a really deep relationship with your guide and you want it to happen quickly, two things have to happen. You have to simply, three, believe they're there, believe they're with you, know they are with you. Okay, you are not sent here alone. Nobody's sent here alone. If you don't hear your guide, you just haven't learned how to hear them. So believe that. Second, open your heart. Open your heart, because your guide will speak to you through an inner knowing that is usually, it starts with unspoken concepts that or promptings. You feel an impulse to do something like a book comes into your path. It just shows up serendipitously, it seems. It just shows up in your path. But it's not chance. Your guide led you to that crux, that conjunction. Check that book out, especially if you get chilling fire, the chi flow resonance, when you encounter that book. If a book keeps coming into your life over and over again and you keep dismissing it, it's the guide trying to get you to look again at it. Look at the serendipities in your life, the things that seem to be just chance. They're not chance. Don't believe they're chance. There's fruit everywhere you go. Look for it. Sometimes it's not very low hanging. Sometimes you have to really look inward. And in that looking inward diligently, you demonstrate your expectation that you're going to get some spiritual juju and some emotional growth out of what you're encountering through the guides taking you where you need to be. Also, realize your guide loves you so intensely that they have devoted their consciousness and spirit presence to be with you. Devote yourself to your guide the same way. Love your guide and commit yourself. Ask your guide to speak to you. Ask your guide for guidance. Ask your guide to teach you discernment. And your guide, just in your committing yourself to your guide and asking, because your guide will not interfere in your decisions, but they will continue to prompt you lovingly, repeatedly, and gently. They don't give up on you. Any really strong, aversive type of impulses that are resulting in behaviors and outcomes that are clearly bad for you, that's your doing. But your guide will teach you to walk the path of the feather, so that the path of the feather, you are easily motivated and moved. You are directed by an inner voice that guides you gently along like a leaf in a river or a feather laying on the river surface. It's just coasted along. If you follow it and you begin to notice the fruit in the promptings, when you're prompted to open that book and read that day something, you've been reading the book, but set it aside, and suddenly there it is. And you think, oh, look at that, and you look at it, you follow that, you're going to find fruit that day in that book. That will happen over and over again. Often my guide brings books and people into my path because there's something there for me, and it has never failed. And every time you have an experience of finding that spiritual fruit, it contributes to your belief in the credibility of that relationship with your guide. And never mind the Bermuda high, never mind the scientific explanations for things. They're absolutely good. There's nothing wrong with science. Science is the bomb. But I'm a scientist, okay? But there are aspects of how things work that are presently beyond the understanding of science, because science refuses to look outside of what they can measure. If they can measure it, they'll investigate it. If they cannot measure it, they will set it aside as can't work with it. It's not that they're saying it's unreal. They say I can't work with it. I can't measure it, so I can't test it. If I can't test it, I can't prove it. I can't disprove it either. Might be real. I don't know. I'm a scientist. That's what I do. I measure things. Okay. Science is great, but don't be deceived by appearances. Look deeper, and look through the eyes of the heart. Look through the eyes of the heart at the person you thought was your enemy.
How can we learn to hear either internally or auditorily our guides? Because I think that's a lot of us. I've struggled with that for years, and I've had experiences of totally hearing my guides, and other times where I'm like, I wish I could hear you. And so how do we learn how to hear either internally or auditorily our guides?
Okay, as far as auditorily, that's pretty rare. I've been listening to Michael since I was 5. Michael speaks to me in complex concepts that seem to drop into mind space and then open like a blossom that integrates with all of my understanding of things as I experience them so that I can relate to them. Okay, it integrates that way. So this is the way they typically talk. You'll recognize the thoughts are from your guide because they're much bigger than you would be able to imagine up yourself, and they happen spontaneously. If you see spontaneous images in your mind, vivid spontaneous images, it's your guide. Your guide is talking to you. If you have a, what was that thing you wanted me to say earlier about concepts? Oh, yes. Okay, thank you. All right, so it's, the guide works in a very interesting way. He knows or she knows everything about you. And so he will pick memories out of your timeline at unexpected moments and show them to you as a remembrance to demonstrate a present significance. This is like that. Now people go, well, that's just your unconscious, your subconscious mind. Well, what do you think your guide is? Okay. Your guide interfaces with you through your semi-conscious, subliminal, and subconscious mind, liminal and subconscious mind. So it's degrees of falling into yourself, into introspection in order to hear that inner guidance. Think of your guide as a gust swirling a dust devil, a leaf devil of your memories. He will lift these memories up in significance to show them to you. And the memories are important. They're to capture that significance. But the guide is the gust that stirs them to whirling. Okay, so watch for these things to be happening in your mind space spontaneously. This requires a constant part of you directed into inner listening and inner looking. The thoughts go through your mind space very quickly because the guide does not force. The guide gently coerces over and over again, lovingly.
I got a question here for you from Catherine Kitty Cat. She says, how do we know the guidance is not malevolent beings manipulating? Thanks.
Well, this is kind of, I hate to lean right on Yeshua Christ, but he told you, you know them by their fruit. Okay. Where does that thought lead? Does it lead to a loving place? Does it lead to forgiveness? Does it give you cheese spangles and make you feel glorious? Does it make you want to love everybody and give them a grand experience and give them more empowerment? That's your guide. Moreover, once you've developed a relationship with your guide, and even before that, when you're first doing it, you can ask your guide to act as a gatekeeper and put up a perimeter around you to exclude any malevolent forces coming into your perception. So there's nobody there but you and your guide. Okay, so that's how you know. Look at where it leads you. Is it going to lead you someplace good, kind, loving, benevolent, counsel you to forgive, counsel you to love, see through the eyes of love, see the heart and not the deed? That's your guide.
Yeah. You kind of have to pass that litmus test of Christ consciousness where, are you part of the unity Christ consciousness or not? And let them answer that.
Right. That's like getting into the heart space first, allowing that to be the prerequisite before you make that contact. The other thing I wanted to say was the way it's your guides, or how do you make contact with your guides? For me, it was quite different. I knew they were speaking, and I would get that thought every once in a while, but I couldn't do it on a consistent basis. And what helped me to know that my guides were speaking was to establish a protocol, a way that I wanted them to correspond with me, a way that I was used to and familiar with receiving and perceiving. And that started to happen with the use of a pendulum, knowing how to use a pendulum. I treated myself as the pendulum, and I told them to interact with me as if I were the pendulum. And that's when my body started the involuntary movements. That's when the movements started for me. So I would say establishing a protocol related to your five senses. It may be that you feel cold on one side and hot on the other side, or something like that, something to that degree. But it's all about learning what works best for you, because we all perceive and receive in our own unique ways. So what works for one may or may not work for another one.
Yes. And that is absolutely what I've found too over the years. I worked with the tarot starting from age 15. I just started, even though I was going into full-blown empiricist, at the same time, I started working with the tarot. And I developed over time a protocol for what the deck that I was working with, or the decks that I was working with, what each card meant to me. Okay. Over time, my understanding of those cards as to their deeper spiritual meanings has evolved, but also the way I lay the cards out and interpret them. And it's a standard agreement between me and my guide. I'm going to do them this way. Okay. And if I'm changing it and going to change my expectations of how the read should go, how I tell the guide, even though they don't need you to tell them, but I voice it, I speak it aloud, because there's power in the spoken word. And if you want your words to have power, the first thing you have to do is cull from your speech and your thoughts all the words you would not really will to empower, because all the time you're trying to reclaim your power from an apparently solid world out there. If you are speaking in out two sides of your mouth, saying one thing here and another thing with your actions, you're canceling out your own summoning at the same time you utter it. And so you tell the guide ahead of time, speak it aloud. This is what I'm looking for. This is how we're going to lay out the cards and read them this time. And the guide will work with that new expectation. And it's all about intention and coupled to expectation. So you have to convince yourself that your expectations are reasonably acquired by doing actions in the physical world. You're basically casting a spell over yourself. And what kind of things you have to do to cast your spell over yourself, doesn't matter. You can swing a pendulum, you can lay out the cards, you can use holy water, whatever it is, you can you can, I don't recommend it because I like birds, but you can butcher a chicken if that's what it takes. Okay. And the chicken's probably very pleased to serve.
All right, beautiful. Thank you. I'm going to flip us over into the Brady Bunch view so everyone can see us all at once as we head out.
I love
all
you
right.
guys. I love you guys. I really do. I've loved you before I ever knew you. I loved you.
That's so awesome.
And everybody in the audience, I've loved you before I ever spoke to you. I came back just to help you get out of this mess.
Amen. Amen. We are so happy to have you part of our family and to be part of the Third Eye family. I hope you nestle in with us and feel at home and keep interacting with us.
And every time you call me sis, you just, my heart just, sis. Since I've lost all of my family except for one sister and my brother-in-law, everybody from my core family, I mean, I have nephews and stuff like that. But it's when you call me sis, it means something to me. It really does. I almost cry every time you do it, but makeup and all, you don't want to mess that up.
I'll refrain this time. I'll wait till we're talking off camera. All right, I'm going to thank everybody for showing up today, all of our live streamers. Thank you so much. We've had a great conversation. Thank you everyone for your great questions and for your energy and for your love. And speaking of that, remember to send our love and our puppy breath to Miss Linda. We have all of our links down below. We've got Mycailin's links down there, Mycailín's links down there, as well as Angela's and of course all of ours. We'd love for you to join our Facebook group. We'd love for you to just become more of our family and share the content out to the world. If this benefited you, please share it out into the world, because that's how we build our community and that's how we transfer people's hearts, is by the messages that come through the show. Next week, we have Dolly Saffron coming through, or Saffron, I'm not sure exactly, but she is a massive ET experiencer. She's been in the military and she's just got an incredible, intense ET life story to share with us next week. So we're super excited about that. All right. And with that, thank you, everyone. Take care, and we will see you next week. Be oh so good to yourself, and we love you. Bye.
Love you too. Bye. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.